Welcome back, everyone. Wow, it says we were 9 seconds into it. That couldn't possibly be right already. Okay. Well, welcome back, everyone.
What an auspicious start.
Great start. Oh, boy, here we go. It has been 3 weeks since we have been with you here on Two Spot Monkeys. We appreciate your patience as we worked through life to get to this point. But here we are, back talking with you. I'm Jim, and joined as always by Tom. Tom, how the heck are you?
Hey, man. I'm super. We are closing out April on a high note and heading full steam into spring. It's awesome to be here recording again, and we have a lot to catch up on.
We do. I joked on the board that we talk about that we're members of that this could be like a triple Broadway show. Oh, I didn't. There was one thing. Never mind. There's something else we're going to talk about that I forgot to put in the rundown earlier that we went over before we clicked record. But we're a little rusty at this. So if we fumble our way through, hey, be patient with us. But it has been a while. But the last thing you heard from us was our head-to-head picks on Wrestlemania, which dropped the night before WrestleMania or Rainemania, as it might have been known on night one. Anyways, we'll talk about that maybe in a little bit. But let's update head-to-head since we did our head-to-head picks. And rinse, repeat. I don't know. It's the same old thing, isn't it? We went, Tom and I in TakeOver. We had the same record over the 2 nights. We were both 7-3, and we'll talk about those matches here in a little bit. And then WrestleMania, it was where, the same old happened. And I went 7-6 over the 2 nights of WrestleMania, and Tom went 8-5. Does that sound right, Tom?
Yeah. It is. That is correct. Yep.
Which brings our year total to our season total for the first 6 months here. Tom is 54-18. I am 51-21. So a 3-match lead for you, Tom. We have WrestleMania Backlash to come, which is, I don't quite understand why they had to change the name of that pay-per-view. But anyways, Double or Nothing as well. And then I would think a June WWE pay-per-view as well.
And maybe Ring of Honor Best in the World?
Best in the World probably should be in June. They haven't announced that date yet, I don't think. Have they?
They have not.
Okay. No. I didn't think so. But Ring of Honor is probably something that'll get tabled for this week, and we'll talk about that more probably next week because we have got a whole lot of WWE and some AEW as well at the end to talk about with their big show coming up next week. But let's start off. We're not going to do the 3 big things just because it's been 3 weeks. The 3 big things is the 3 weeks it's been since these shows happened. But we're just going to have some back and forth freeform discussion. We don't have an agenda other than as we work through the nights. So, Tom, NXT Stand and Deliver night 1, the Wednesday night of WrestleMania week on USA. Let's run down just the results real quick, just to remind ourselves of what happened what night. On the pre-show, which they announced a pre-show for each of those 2 nights, kind of day of, Zoe Stark beat Toni Storm, which was interesting to me and has played out some more on TV. And that's the one thing with the 3 weeks since the shows, excuse me, I got a frog in my throat, is we have some of the aftermath to talk about as well. Pete Dunne beat Kushida in the opener on the actual show proper. The Gauntlet Eliminator match was next, and Bronson Reed came out of that as the winner to win the North American title shot on night 2. The UK title match was a war. Walter over Tommaso Ciampa. The tag title decision match was the MSK. There we go. MSK, Wesley and Nash Carter over the Grizzled Young Veterans and Legado del Fantasma. And then in the main event, Raquel Gonzalez ascends to the top, beats Io Shirai. I can't talk this morning, Tom, and wins the NXT Women's title. Tom, initial thoughts? What struck you on night 1? So,
first and foremost, I was incredibly thankful, and this is going to be like a preface that carries through all of our discussion here. I was on a family vacation. We had just arrived in Macon, Georgia, kind of like right as this show was starting on Wednesday night. So while I was tired of being in the car for 13 hours, I was tempted to go and jump on USA and watch this show just to be like, hey, let me try to see what's happening. I didn't, because there were other factors in play, like getting my family settled and eating food that were higher priorities at the moment. Plus, I knew I was recording all these. But the big thing for all of these events was really trying to stay spoiler-free and off social media and away from things that would ruin kind of, me coming back and then just doing a massive like watch-a-thon, which surprisingly went well. Both in the sense of I stayed pretty spoiler free. I want to say I stayed 100% spoiler free in NXT. WrestleMania, not so much. But then the fact that I got back a week later and I watched a crap ton of wrestling. Like I didn't watch wrestling like for, I want to say, about 8 calendar days because of the trip and the vacation. And then I think I watched 50 matches in 4 days or something, some stupid number. I thought this first night was a great show. I thought the energy was fantastic. I thought the in-ring was super solid. It was a great, if it's the final Wednesday night show ever, it may or may not be. They're back on their Tuesdays now, and this was the last Wednesday night event for the foreseeable future. It was a great way to bring that Wednesday night run to an end. Really high on the UK title match and the tag title match, but I also thought Pete Dunne and Kushida was up there as well. So, in all, in terms of the results, not very surprised. I know that we differed on our picks. Excuse me. In only one match here, and I had Io retaining, and you had Raquel winning. So you got the one up there. I don't have a problem with that. I'm interested to see where Io Shirai goes next, because it appears that she's not yet leaving NXT. Historically, you would have thought potentially this is one of those things where, big NXT talent hands the torch off and then shows up on Raw or SmackDown shortly thereafter. And to the day of this recording, Io Shirai has not shown up on Raw or SmackDown.
Nor has virtually anybody else new. My goodness.
Yeah.
And that can maybe be a discussion when we talk WrestleMania, the most disappointing post-Raw or post-WrestleMania Raw and SmackDown I think I've ever seen. But that's not an NXT conversation. I agree with you. Top to bottom, everything worked. Everything was good to great. I did not see the Zoe Stark and Toni Storm match. I didn't go back and watch that because, not like you, because I wasn't on a fun vacation in Florida or Georgia that night and then on to Florida. But I didn't see either of the NXT nights live due to other obligations. So I think I caught most of this on Thursday, maybe a little bit Friday morning, right before I went to work to finish it up. But man, just awesome. And I was spoiler free on this show as well, which I agree. Watching things spoiler free, even if you have to see them after the fact, is so much more fun than watching things that you already know the results of. Even if you maybe don't know how they got there or those kinds of things, so it's still interesting to watch. Watching it as though you were watching it live, I agree, just changes the whole enjoyment level for me. Walter and Tommaso Ciampa, probably match of the night, but the only reason I say probably is because it's hard to fully say which one was the match of the night because they were all so good. I'd probably put Pete Dunne and Kushida second, but I wouldn't argue that anybody puts the tag match there or the women's title match or, any of it. The gauntlet was good. They had to get through a lot in a not terribly long time frame. But the surprise of that, I think, was Bronson Reed winning that gauntlet. You and I both had Dexter Lumis winning it, which from all storyline purposes seemed to make the most sense. They've still kept that story going, though, even now without Dexter winning it. So maybe it was a way to help keep pushing Bronson Reed up as well, which I'm a fan of Bronson Reed. So I was okay with that win and thought it was good. Thought that I liked that at the beginning of that, if I'm remembering things correctly, Swerve and Leon Ruff, kind of came brawling out of the back to start it, basically. which I loved because they've got such a hot issue. You know, if you told me that they would put a feud together with Leon Ruff that I would actually like be interested in, I might have told you were crazy, because Leon Ruff's fine, but I just, he doesn't really hit the top of my like, oh, I want to see that guy. I'm really looking forward to their Falls Count Anywhere match next week between the two of them on NXT. Tom, are you up to date on NXT?
I am. Yep.
You do that. I'm really looking forward to that match next week. I think that's going to be really, really fun. So kudos to them on that. But man, this thing just, I thought it clicked all the way along. And I thought Raquel being crowned and then taking over as the top dog in the women's division was a fitting way to end night one and make you, really look forward to what night two was probably going to bring. Also, let's see, I'm trying to think. We didn't have any, I don't think on Stand and Deliver we had any new stars appear. They promoted, why am I drawing a blank on her name? Frankie Monet.
Saray was in the crowd, I thought, yeah.
Oh, Saray was in the crowd, right? But they'd already announced she would be on the next show or the next week, or was coming soon, I guess. And then Frankie Monet, they continued the promos for, and let's just talk maybe about that for a second. Frankie Monet, to me, I mean, Taya Valkyrie, the former Taya Valkyrie, is good in the ring. I like Taya. What I've seen of her in Lucha Underground, I didn't see a lot of her in Impact because I didn't have access, as we've talked about before. Although I do now. And I recorded Impact for a couple of weeks, and I just never found time to watch it. I've heard it's a good show. I just don't have more time in my schedule. But boy, her character kind of annoys me right now in NXT, to be perfectly honest. I think that's the point, though. So maybe I'm supposed to be annoyed. How are you feeling about Frankie Monet, Tom?
The jury's out, but I would agree with your opinion there. I think that she's kind of supposed to be kind of like irritating and grating on those that she comes into contact with. So yeah, I look forward to when she actually gets the chance to debut in the ring. The women's division in NXT seems really busy right now, and that's not a bad thing. I would rather have that be the case. It's so interesting, pardon me, because I think in the transition after the takeovers and kind of the resetting of the table or the deck, if you will, so far, in my opinion, like the women's division is kind of the hot spot. We're still kind of waiting on the title scene to kind of develop some more. We'll talk about that as we talk about night two and then beyond. And there's some other stuff at the top of the card that I think is still in process. It hasn't fully materialized. The one thing I just want to do or ask or just share about night one and just get your opinion or thoughts on before we maybe transition to night two was just the perhaps lack of Imperium involvement in the UK title match and or Timothy Thatcher. It seems like that issue has maybe not continued in the way that I thought it was leading up to that match, and I'm not sure exactly why. So just, wondering your thoughts there.
Yeah, good point. It's weird because they certainly were teasing Imperium, kind of recruiting Timothy Thatcher. They weren't teasing it. They were out and out doing it. And Thatcher not being around until again this week, I think, was when he came back.
I think he was there last year, or last week was backstage. This week was in.
That's right. That's right. They had a sit-down interview last week, and this week actually in front of the crowd. And thank God Tommaso Ciampa shaved his head again. Good thought, Tommaso. He doesn't look like Grandpa Ciampa anymore. But yeah, it's weird because I agree with you. They did this story for a little while, and it seemed like it should have some. And it almost seems like now they've shifted it to Killian Dane. And Drake Maverick, which, okay. I mean, look, I like Killian Dane. I think Killian Dane can be a nice, either kick-ass babyface or monster kind of heel, because he's a big guy. I think he's really good. So I'm fine with doing something with Dane and eventually breaking him away from this goofy tag team with Drake Maverick. But it just kind of shifted, and no real reason. And you could do both. They could be recruiting both Dane and Thatcher. I would be fine with that. In fact, I think that would make some sense. Why wouldn't they want to get both of those guys in their fold? They have history. Both of them obviously are great competitors. So why wouldn't you want them as part of your team? All of those kinds of things. So yeah, it was very odd that never played a role. I kept waiting for Thatcher to walk out, and or come out of the crowd or do something, and then crickets. I don't know where he was. So I don't know if there was an injury there. In this day and age, you got to think, was there a COVID situation? Did he, was he not cleared for some reason? I don't know. It seems like there had to be some reason they didn't do that, but then they've just kind of pivoted away from it totally now, it seems like. And I'm a little bummed about that because I would have liked some resolution to that story in one way or another. I'm fine if Thatcher wasn't going to go to Imperium, if he was going to stay with Ciampa. I'm certainly fine with those two being in the tag division, because that tag division is pretty stacked right now too. And that's always a good thing. I think when you don't just have kind of let's be honest, what the WWE has with the women's tag division, where it's, you have champions and then kind of you have the flavor of the month challenger. So I'm glad that if they're staying together as a team, that's great. But yeah, I agree. That was a little bit odd that they didn't ever come to some resolution on that. Maybe it pops back up in the future, but I mean, there's no hint of it even in the last couple of weeks. It's all been all about the tag division as far as Ciampa and Thatcher sit. So
yeah, and it seemed like it would have been a natural, if they weren't going to go with Thatcher joining Imperium, it would have felt like Thatcher coming out to assist or console or support Ciampa, leading to a Thatcher Walter match down the road. Seemed like it would make a lot of sense. Absolutely. Again, and maybe we still get there. Who knows? And I, we do our own, or we do enough of our own fair share of armchair booking here on the show. So lest I not get walked down that path too strongly this morning.
After all, that is what a podcast is for, right? The other piece, maybe for night one, just really is somebody in NXT really likes Zoe Stark, and I like Zoe Stark. Although I don't know, the story they're telling right now with her kind of being she fights really hard but doesn't always get the win, although she did get the win on this night. It was interesting that they had her face Io pretty quickly. They had her, be the debut opponent for Saray, which was a really good match. But again, there was no chance Zoe Stark was winning that match. Although, on the flip side, I would have said there was no chance that Zeta Ramir was going to beat Toni Storm on Tuesday night either. And okay, we'll see if Zeta Ramir becomes a thing at all, or if it was, the 1 week just to tell the story and we're never going to see Zeta again for a while. But yeah, somebody is a big fan of Zoe Stark in NXT, and I'm okay with that. I just hope that they build her at some point here too, because I think, the tough luck babyface who occasionally gets a surprise win is fine, but if you're going to do something with her, do something. We'll see where that goes. Well, let's bounce to night two, and who knows, some of night two may bleed back into thought, remind us of things of night one. But results for night two, Tom, just to remind again ourselves of everything that happened. Again, on the pre-show, we had a number one contenders tag team match. Killian Dane and Drake Maverick won that match over Fandango and Tyler Breezango. There we go. That was what I was looking for. Yeah. Okay. That match happened. I didn't see it. Probably all we'll ever talk about it. The Cruiserweight Unification Ladder match kicked off the show proper on Peacock. Santos Escobar wins the ladder match anyways, we'll talk about that maybe in a minute. But he beat Jordan Devlin in the ladder match. The women's tag team title match was next. Shotzi and Ember retained over Candice and Indy Hartwell. The North American title match, Gargano retains over Bronson Reed. The NXT title match was next, so they did things in the order you and I thought they should. And Karrion Kross wins the NXT title over Finn Balor. And then in the unsanctioned lights out match, Kyle O'Reilly over Adam Cole. I thought night two was good, very good, maybe not quite to the level of night one. and I can't totally put my finger on it. Nothing was bad. I did not see the pre-show match, but that one. If I was going to go back and watch either pre-show match, I probably would have watched the Zoe Stark Tony Storm match before I would have watched Dane and Maverick and Breezango. Breezango is just, I don't know how they still have jobs, but Samoa Joe doesn't. Anyways, we'll talk about that in a little while. I thought it was a good show. I thought the ladder match was really good. I think we both picked Santos, didn't we?
We did. Yep.
And so I was happy there. And I have Santos Escobar in our fantasy wrestling league that we talk about here every once in a while. So I was very happy with that result from that. Not that it matters because I'm sitting at the bottom of the standings pretty much anyways. I got a couple people behind me, but not many. I think for me, the obviously the two big stories were Karrion Kross winning that title against Balor, which was a good match, but not epic. It was good. And I think, if I'm being fair, I like Karrion Kross a lot, but I haven't seen him have an epic match yet. And we often get that in the NXT title scene. You think about the Andrades and the Drew McIntyres and Gargano and Ciampa and so many of the NXT champs, Finn Balor, who have had just phenomenal title runs, and their title matches especially are usually just awesome matches. This was good, and I like him as a character. I don't know. We'll see. I think it's going to be interesting to see, as you said, Tom, a little bit. The title scene seems to still be fleshing itself out moving forward, which is fine. That it's okay that we don't go into the next week and already have, somebody established as the next contender just because William Regal said so, or somebody declared they're the number one contender, or whatever. Finn Balor we haven't seen since NXT, since Stand and Deliver. He will be back next week. Apparently took himself on a vacation with his wife, so good for him. Glad he had some fun. So that was good. I was really glad they ended with Cole and O'Reilly, though. That story deserved the main event spot of Stand and Deliver, and not to be totally punny about it, they delivered. I think those two absolutely beat the tar out of each other. I think it was a potentially career-defining win for Kyle O'Reilly, although the next Tuesday, he had a weird character shift on that next Tuesday show where he almost had an Orange Cassidy vibe. Like, not, I don't know. It was a mix between Orange Cassidy and like Riddle. I don't know. I'm trying to put my finger on how I would describe his new character. And yet now this past Tuesday, the only time that we saw him was watching Adam Cole's interview, and it was a dark kind of shot, and he just looked like disgusted that Adam Cole still, is Adam Cole. And so that made me think, okay, is it not going the more kind of goofy route it seemed like it was headed? I don't know. The Kyle O'Reilly character change since Stand and Deliver has been a little bit odd, and you've mentioned that, I know, on the board that we're a part of, so I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that too, Tom. But match-wise, I thought their unsanctioned match was great. Easily.
Yeah. Yes. This no discredit to the undercard. This was a 2-match show on paper going in, and in actuality, again, the ladder match was fine. Nothing to nitpick it there. The result was what it was and what I predicted. So maybe that's why it's less of an emotional or like a meaningful vibe for me. The energy for this night was different. So that is, to me, why I think the show felt different in terms of presentation. It's interesting. I had this thought. It fleeted away. It came back to me now. I wondered if I had watched live night one and seen the whole night on Peacock when they went to commercial breaks on USA. I watched the USA version, so I don't know how that would have been any different, if it would have at all. So just throwing that out there. One thing we didn't talk about is they've expanded the capacity, it seems, for the number of people inside the Capitol Wrestling Center. That was noticeable on night one and night two. I'm going to guess that there was a lot of people who were the same. because those are some of the NXT diehards that are able to report there and be there and get access.
I was saying some of them are trainees too.
So. Yeah. So on the hard cam side, I think like Anthony Henry, as a good example, was one of the guys in the crowd one of the nights who used to be involved and kind of an emerging name on the indies for the 2018, 2019 window before the pandemic started, and there were other people there as well. But the energy for sure on night 2 was a different vibe. Thinking about Karrion Kross, so we're about to enter May of this calendar year. If I'm not mistaken, Karrion Kross debuted in May of 2020 in NXT or right around that time. So he's coming up on a full year in NXT and a year where he won the NXT title from Keith Lee. And immediately when this match ended, I go, wow, has his best match been against Keith Lee? And I said to myself, I think that's the case. And that was, again, nothing against this match because it was good. I just don't think that Karrion Kross has had the right type of opponents in quote unquote competitive matches outside of Keith Lee. Leading up to Keith Lee, when he was running roughshod through people, including, much to our surprise back then, Tommaso Ciampa, among others. But Ciampa was clearly the biggest name and the most established name, and they've never come back around to that ever, which is okay. They don't necessarily need to, per se. I just feel like there needs I don't know who would mesh well with Karrion Kross. I wasn't familiar with his time in Impact. I wasn't familiar with his time in Lucha Underground, so I don't know what type of in-ring he was doing then. And again, this isn't a thing where everybody has to have 4-star matches, 5-star matches. But unfortunately, like you named, when you have a lineage of Andrade, Aleister Black, Adam Cole, Johnny Gargano, Tommaso Ciampa, and you're having these match of the year contender NXT title matches to shift the mindset or to shift the reality from that presentation to something different is interesting. And I could see that happening if you were moving like Johnny Gargano up to that like workhorse space. He has that means. I kind of envision like Johnny Gargano as being like the Intercontinental style champion. Those were always the workhorse matches, like in the 80s and 90s. Even if you had Hogan or Warrior or Sergeant Slaughter or whomever else on top as the world champion. Again, you don't have to do that either. So just throwing those kind of thoughts out there. I'll agree with you. I am thankful, grateful, appreciative that it ended with the best match from an in-ring standpoint and from a issue standpoint. I mean, right. Cole and O'Reilly have the most history, and gosh, they were brutal. So loved that. Loved the way that it played out. Cringed a number of times as I watched that match. Glad that they are both well. Interesting that they did the kind of the stretcher job, and then the week after had them kind of arriving to the hospital together, and you've got Cole. O'Reilly seemed to be worse for the wear, but Cole was the one running his mouth. And then
I love that, to be honest.
For sure, right? So that's the competitive spirit of it all. But it's interesting because it seemed to flip kind of the way we saw the show end. With O'Reilly did have the wear and tear, but was the last man standing, and then clearly maybe he had just enough to get to that point, and Cole showed that he wasn't yet out of it, perhaps. But then, Kyle O'Reilly comes in on Tuesday and has an appearance of an Orange Cassidy type look. Again, it's anyone's look. It just happens to have been defined by someone who's a pretty big star on the competitive brand that was also going head to head with you on Wednesday night. So easy to make that correlation, even though I think Kyle O'Reilly tweeted out on the Thursday after the Wednesday after I'm not allowed to wear the things I want to wear or have my look. I mean, sure, you're right. No one can tell you what to wear other than probably his bosses. That being said, to not think you look a little bit like Orange Cassidy before he walked through the curtain.
He definitely talked more than Orange Cassidy, but
Yeah. So. And for me, and the comment that I made in kind of reflecting on watching that play out and seeing him interact with on that night Cameron Grimes was just such. We've come to know Kyle O'Reilly as a very sports centric, combat centric presentation, and it's very clear that he's got MMA kind of training, jiu-jitsu training. I mean, that's where Cole attacked him in the build up to this match. And that doesn't mean he can't come out dressed like he did and still have that, but he didn't seem to be portraying the same type of like, I want to be the best wrestler. I want to kick butt. I want to set my sights on the NXT title, and here's how I'm going to do it. Then there's nothing to say like you can't be like Joe Cool and be still like interested in being like a top-notch badass. So we'll see how that comes. Again, when you look at what happened on that first Tuesday and then you look what happened this week, just the soul, like dark room watching Cole's promo. He looked like the old Kyle O'Reilly for whatever that's worth, and we didn't have any sound bites from him, so it'll be interesting. Clearly, that's not done. I don't know where they go next because that unsanctioned match was pretty nuts.
Right.
It's kind of like we go back to the Roman Reigns Kevin Owens issue. You have TLC, then you have a cage, then you have a last man standing. Like, that's typically not the order you'd go in.
Yeah, I don't know where it goes either. I mean, at this point, it's the murder match. Like one of them must die to lose. I mean, I just don't know. Don't get me wrong. I'm okay with seeing it again because Cole and O'Reilly deliver every time they have for a long time when they've been in the ring together. So, I'm okay with that. But and you mentioned one other thing. That isn't necessarily a Stand and Deliver thing because he was on night one. Can I just say, I love that Ted DiBiase finally showed up on NXT, and it sounds like it's going to move forward a little bit too. And DiBiase is going to be in, at least for a few weeks or vignettes or something. We both said on the show that Grimes mentioning Ted DiBiase so many times better pay off with Ted DiBiase actually showing up sometime. And when DiBiase just laughed in his face on Tuesday night, I popped. I loved it. I've enjoyed the Cameron Grimes character. I'm glad that they didn't. My fear with it was that it was going to be funny for a week or two, and then they were going to have him broke and penniless. And I just thought it was going to go really fast. And I'm glad that they've let this play out for a while. Grimes is charismatic as all get out. Really good in the ring too. So, I've enjoyed that they haven't let us forget that either. He hasn't turned into a total comedy goof character. He is a little bit of a goof. He can still go in the ring, and they've shown that. So I thought he and O'Reilly had a good match. I love O'Reilly using the, I'm going to call it the King Kong knee drop because it's kind of Togi Maccabee's King Kong knee drop that he uses in New Japan coming off the top rope. I love that move. For Kyle's knees, I'm not sure how long it's going to be able to be his finish because that has got to be hard on your knees coming down off the top rope and landing like that. But it looks really cool. And when you did it with a chain wrapped around his knee, even better. I Stand and Deliver, stood and delivered. Haha, puns intended there. But I thought both of those shows were great. Were very good to great. And set the bar at a point that WrestleMania was going to have to really work to beat. And spoiler alert, in my eyes, they didn't even come close.
And so just to put a pin in the NXT chat, clearly, so then they debuted on Tuesday after these shows. They've been on Tuesdays now for 3 consecutive weeks. So have you noticed anything, in your opinion, that's discernible about how they're presenting and doing their shows, not having to compete with something on the other channel? I mean, they're competing, right? Because you've got, you're always competing for ratings, but clearly on Wednesdays, the big competition was AEW. That no longer exists. Do you feel any different about how they're doing TV or how they're presenting what they're doing?
I haven't, not necessarily. I've enjoyed it. I've enjoyed having them on 2 separate nights. I don't then come home on, I think many people listening to this know that I run a trivia company. I have a trivia night on Wednesday nights. So on Wednesday nights, I would come home, or Thursday mornings, I'd look and I'd have both of those shows, sitting, waiting to be watched. And it was like, oh man, I got 4 hours. I got of wrestling here. And now I have a Tuesday night trivia night too, so I'm not able to watch NXT. Them moving did not change my ability to watch them live. I can't watch them live, on Tuesdays either. But I was able to watch a little bit of it Tuesday night before I went to bed, and then Wednesday morning I was able to watch a little bit. So I was able spread it out and not feel like it's so stacked. So I enjoy that. If I didn't have evening obligations, I would even love more that it was split up so that I could watch it each week. But I haven't noticed any discernible things. I will say, I think we're clearly headed towards a Dakota Kai and Raquel Gonzalez split, which I kind of saw coming even before the title when Raquel was, ascending and becoming the person in that division. I think Dakota Kai is, jealousy is going to get the best of her in this at some point. Raquel and Mercedes next week will be, I think that's next week or in 2 weeks. They're both them and AEW are doing an interesting thing, I think, where they're not only announcing what comes next week, but they're also announcing some things for 2 and even 3 weeks out, which I kind of like because MLW does that. I haven't watched as much MLW as I'd like to, but they call it their fight schedule because they kind of talk about everything being fights, not matches. But they'll list at least the main event for like the next 3 or 4 weeks on the screen. And I think that's good because it makes you go, oh, I want to make sure I come back and see that. AEW has Blood and Guts next week. We're going to talk about them in a little bit, but they've already announced Jon Moxley and Yuji Nagata for the next week for the New Japan US title. That makes me go, oh yeah, not only do I want to see Blood and Guts, but I want to see Moxley and Nagata too. And NXT has been doing that too. So I kind of like that piece that both of them seem to have picked up on. I couldn't tell you who started doing it first. And then the other one probably went, hey, that's a really good idea. We should do that.
Well, and you would think when you're competing, what a great way to kind of like get the leg up on your opposition.
Right. But they wait until they split apart to both just start doing that.
Precisely. That was my thought.
To be fair, AEW has done some of that in the past.
Yeah, I agree.
Winter is coming. They promoted for, almost a month. So AEW has done a little bit more of that than NXT. So they probably do get the nod for being first on that. How about you, Tom? Have you noticed any differences?
There was one segment, and I looked back at the results briefly here, and I couldn't tell you which week it was, where I felt like there was like 3 segments in a row that were all focused on the female talent, and there's nothing wrong with that because, like we talked about when we were talking about night one, there's a lot of talented, members of that division, and a lot of ways you can go. But as I watch that, I go like in a quote unquote ratings battle, would they have done that before? And I didn't know that they did, or I couldn't say that they had or hadn't. So I just thought that was a very unique, like, I'm pretty sure it was like almost like it felt like 30 minutes or more of TV time that was dedicated to 3 different kind of segments of issues that were going on, and they were all focused on the female talent. And again, this perhaps makes me sound like, oh, that shouldn't be the case. No, I want that. I just was quite surprised that it was built the way that it was. When you think about structuring a show, you want to feature your talent across the board, and I thought it was an interesting presentation of how it was written. I don't want to feel or sound like I think I'm being sexist. That's not my intent. So if it's landing like that with our listeners, please accept my apologies.
Well, now we've learned about Tom. No, I hear what you're saying. I do think being on separate nights does afford them the ability to try things that they might not otherwise try because there isn't. People are still going to compare their ratings or their number of viewers, but it's not the head-to-head anymore. You don't have we did that, and so they switched to the other channel. Now, you might show something, hey, we did that, and yeah, we lost. And I don't mean that being the women's. I mean just that being any general thing. We did something, and we lost 40,000 viewers the next quarter hour. That still can be a thing, but you're not looking at, we lost 40,000 and AEW gained 40,000. Like, they switched the channel. That's bad. They don't have that anymore. So it does afford them the chance to maybe try some things that they might have felt hindered on before while they were head to head. So, and AEW up until this week had been over 1 million viewers since the split of the 2 shows. NXT viewers, I don't think had changed all that much, to be perfectly honest, which was a little surprising maybe, but AEW dropped back down. It's about 880,000, I think, this week, which is kind of where they'd been hanging before too. So be interesting to see.
And I just want to jump back to co-sign what you had shared, the appreciation of them now being on separate nights, even though because of the the busy schedules that we have as a family, and now we've got 2 kids in sports and a kid in driver's ed, and we're going hither and yon almost every other day. I rarely watch wrestling live on a given night because I'm either sleeping or trying to catch up on the busyness of just our lives. So it's always on a DVR. But to your comment, having the ability to record NXT on a Tuesday and watch it throughout the day on a Wednesday when I have breaks in my day, and then conversely do that with AEW Wednesday to Thursday. Now, that being said, we'll talk about AEW a little more in detail soon, and next Wednesday is destination viewing, but we'll get there.
Yeah, I'm going to be staying off social media next Wednesday, to be perfectly honest, because that's a show I want to see. Often things get spoiled for AEW because I just don't stay off social media, but that one, probably will be. Still staying off social media was, I wasn't actually. The first night of Wrestlemania was the one show I was able to watch live of these 4. Was able to watch the entire show. Or Rainomania.
WrestleRania.
WrestleRania. Oh, there's a nice one, Tom. I hadn't seen that one yet. Good one on that. The first ever rain delay at WrestleMania. Some storms moved through Tampa both days, but night 2 they were through the area a little quicker and earlier in the day, so they weren't. It poured day 2. That Sunday, I saw some photos and videos early in the day, and I thought, well, they might have a bigger problem they had night 1 if this keeps up. I mean, it's absolutely pouring on Sunday. But Saturday had some rain. I thought it was interesting. Now, you saw this after the fact. Was the rain delay still on there, Tom?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
It was.
After the fact, or while it happened, they come right on the air and say, we're sorry to tell you that we're in a rain delay. And I thought they were, when he said, we're sorry to inform you, I thought, oh gosh, like some big match isn't going to happen. Like something, somebody tested positive for COVID or something like that. And no, it wasn't that. It was the rain delay. But the thing I thought was interesting is he said, everybody's in cover or taking cover. And there were fans all behind him while they said that. Now they eventually moved them out. And so, but it was just a little weird when he first said it, because I was like, well, those people aren't going anywhere. And a couple of people online were like, well, it's just rain. I'm like, no, it's got to be lightning in the area. Like, that's why they, anytime if you've been to a football game or baseball or anything, the only time they ever clear the stands is a lightning threat. So, or I guess tornadoes or something like that, but that wasn't the situation. So kudos to them for safety being, the number one on that. Before we get into the results, let me just, I don't really want to get on a COVID soapbox or anything. It was interesting to me. It didn't seem very socially distanced. The fans, they weren't in pods or anything like that. I mean, it was just, I think they moved them all as close to the ring as they could, it looked like to me, for the most part. And man, there were a lot of them that weren't keeping masks on throughout the night. It was just interesting. Maybe that's just the PTSD of the last year in our lives that I watch things in that way. Conversely, we're recording this early on Friday morning. Watched the NFL draft last night. All of the people who were closest, at least to this stage, I know, were vaccinated, and they had stickers that said, they were vaccinated, and that was part of how you were able to get that close. People can have their arguments about whether, that should be even a thing or not, that you have to prove that to, get close or whatever, but it's how it worked last night. The NFL can do what they want. They're not a public entity, they're a private business in all. But I will say it looked like they had a ton of people, and they were not socially distanced either. There were a ton of people very close to each other last night, but boy, they kept their masks on better. Not everybody. I don't know. There were points at WrestleMania where I was just like, they'd show me crowd shots, and I was like, please don't be a super spreader. And 3 weeks out, I haven't heard anything. So hopefully that's good news. And hopefully that means we're also rounding the curve on this whole thing. Again, don't want to turn this into a COVID podcast. And I realize that our listeners may be at very different places in how you feel about what things are going on and that sort of thing. But it was interesting. I will say on the flip side, loved having that size of a crowd cheering, even though they did definitely sweeten the noise a little bit.
So I hear your observation, and it's interesting because I wonder if there's going to be an approach by sports entities that are in outdoor venues. I wonder if this being an outdoor venue had anything to do with the way that the seats were staggered. I didn't share those feelings as I watched, but I also, again, I was maybe less intentional about looking for that in the moment, because I was trying to, like, hey, I need to get through these shows, like, and I want to know what happens, right? So, like, I wanted to get live and current with wrestling as best I could. Juxtapose this event with the UFC event that I believe happened a week ago Saturday in Jacksonville, which was an indoor venue and a sellout. I saw photos there and it made me cringe. Now, that being said, like, in full transparency, the little league that my son plays for, there's a mask mandate. There's signs when you walk up to a field that says maintain social distance, wear your mask. And there have been a number of emails that they're supposed to be enforcing this. Jim, they're not enforcing it. And I got my second shot 5 days ago. I am, what was it, 2 weeks? I am, 10 days away, 9 days away from being what the science says as being fully vaccinated. So if anyone in 9 days can walk around without a mask on, it should be this guy. Not that I'm going to, because here's the thing. I want to be part of the solution. And even though I have some severe mask fatigue, my wife has severe mask fatigue. In Michigan, we just launched this week a new thing where kids that are 2 and older now all have to wear masks. So my daughter, who works in a childcare center, has to manage this with little ones. Again, I'm not here to politicize or to, like, pontificate on the good, the bad, and the ugly. It's a mess, and there's always going to be two sides of a coin. And again, even if UFC comes out and that was a super spreader thing in Florida, I guess we'll have to wait and see what happens and how we respond. We're not getting through this any quicker as a country because we are Americans and we're stubborn. And that, I hate to cast that blanket statement across us all, but it's a really good descriptor of the what and the who. So we'll stop there, I think, unless you want to respond to anything I shared.
Yeah, no, and I do agree that the outdoor versus indoor, I think, is a big piece. And obviously CDC changed some guidance this week about outdoor, not necessarily in larger groups, but we've seen some outdoor things. The Rangers, had a packed house, and haven't heard, at least, that things came out of that. Again, outdoor. So I think you're right.
And while this was happening, I was in Florida at Disney World, and they had 35% capacity that they were allowing even into the park, which is bananas because it seemed as busy as ever. Even though I think getting through the lines was a whole lot quicker than we ever experienced previous. This was only our second time ever, so not a whole lot of comparison there. But masks were required, and people who were at Disney were not playing around with that. Like, I don't mean to be like they were, like, being super vigilant in making sure people were wearing masks. I think people entered Disney knowing that expectation and then just honored that. And then when there were a handful of times when people either let it slip or whatever, the cast is how they call the staff at Disney, were very gentle about reminding people, and I never saw it once become an issue.
And perhaps there too, you're thinking, man, I spent a whole lot of money here, and if I get thrown out simply for not wearing a mask, that's something. Because I don't think Disney got a whole lot cheaper just because they're only at 35% capacity. So
you would be correct. And so
you would know that better than I, my friend.
And so talking about, like, the weather, because I was in Orlando. Yes. This was in Tampa. Orlando, a little southeast of where Tampa is. That being said, we still got a lot of this weather as well. Nothing on Saturday. We saw the skies, but we didn't have bad weather. It wasn't a park day for us. It was a resort day. So we were poolside and we were going to Disney Springs. It was cold on Saturday night, cold for Florida. Like, we ate outdoors and we were not as comfortable as we would have liked. So I'll put that out there. Sunday, we actually happened to be at a park and the weather was so bad. We left the park and went back to the resort and came back to the park later in the day because you just couldn't do anything. That's how bad the weather was. That was a whole nother day, which on another time, I'll share that story with you about that Sunday and all that we encountered to make some interesting and memories, to say the least. But yeah, so my mind was on people in Tampa during both of those times and watching the weather and having been outdoors.
And that's the thing, certainly with any outdoor WrestleMania, I know we've had the conversation, maybe not on this show, but in the past with the New York WrestleManias. It could snow in New York in April. I mean, let's be honest. So anytime you've got an outdoor event, you run the risk. In Florida, they often have these squalls. It's so hot and humid during the day a lot of times, more in the summer probably than the spring, I don't know. But that you often get these rainstorms. Katie and I were in Orlando in 2019 with our friend Greg, and just about every night you had at least a 20-minute downpour, and then it would just be really humid afterwards, which was always super comfortable. But yeah, so WrestleMania outside, they had the rain delay,
and this was the first ever delay in WrestleMania history, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so. I cannot think of another, other than like setting up the cage or something like that, kinds of production delays because of planned, and then they do something to distract the audience while they fixed got whatever done. But yeah, I don't believe a weather delay or anything like that has ever happened at a WrestleMania, which is kind of amazing with the number of outdoor WrestleManias that they have done. That this is finally, WrestleMania 37 is the first one that actually happens at.
Yeah, I thought the same thing.
So let's run down those results for night one. Once they finally were able to get going, about 35, 40 minutes later, something like that. The WWE title match was the first match. I did like, and I think we talked about this a little bit on the preview, that there were rumors they were not going to do a kickoff match or pre-show match. They had the kickoff shows, which were an hour each day, but they were just, running the videos and promos and that sort of thing. No kickoff match because they wanted that reaction. They did start with all of the stars on the stage. And had somebody sing the national anthem or America the Beautiful, and I can't remember now night one who it was. Ashley McBride, I think that was one of them. One of the nights. Anyways, both nights they did that.
We didn't record that in the FWL results. I apologize.
We did not, so I don't have that here. No appearance points for musicians. I will say real briefly, and this is more of a night two thing than a night one thing. So night one, they had them all on the stage for the singing, and Vince did his little welcome thing, welcome to WrestleMania. But I thought it was cool that he was out there to thank the fans and say how much they'd missed them and that sort of thing. Night two, during the singing of America the Beautiful or the national anthem, whichever one they did, I feel like they did one of them each of the nights, but could be wrong on that. Night two, they showed the clips or shots of the superstars standing on the stage from the night before. They were not back out there. And in fact, it even said in the corner, last night. Why? Why do that? Like, you had them out there last night. If you don't bring them back out the night two, that's fine. But don't show me clips of it last night. Last night, we had them all standing here. But tonight, we don't. But we want to show you that we did it last night. Like, I don't know. It's just... it caught me as strange, but anyways, let's go back to results now that I've whined about that for a minute. Bobby Lashley beats Drew McIntyre. We'll talk about that in a minute, I think. But Bobby Lashley beats Drew McIntyre to kick off the show and retain his title. In the tag team turmoil match, eventually, Natalya and Tamina end up getting that win in the gauntlet. It turned into not a 4-way or not a 4 or 5-way, but a gauntlet match, which I should have remembered the tag team turmoils were gauntlet matches, but nonetheless, Natalya and Tamina end up winning that after a good run from the Riot Squad, but Natalya and Tamina end up winning that match and getting the tag title shot the next night. Cesaro with a big win over Seth Rollins. The Raw tag title match, AJ Styles and Omos win the tag titles and have not been seen since. But apparently are returning this week. One of them hadn't been medically cleared, which had to be AJ because Omos didn't do all that much other than look really impressive. The steel cage match from hell. Steel cage match. Braun Strowman beats Shane McMahon. Damian Priest and Bad Bunny end up in a tag team match after all, as you and I thought they might. Beat The Miz and John Morrison. And then in the SmackDown Women's title match to close the night, main event of night one, Bianca Belair wins the title over Sasha Banks. As much as I said before that Stand and Deliver, WrestleMania did not touch Stand and Deliver, and I will stand by that statement. I thought night one was a pretty fun show, all in all, to be perfectly honest. I gotta say though, let's just start there. Bobby Lashley beats Drew McIntyre. Thankfully, it was not the 8-second squash that we thought it might be. We thought, it might be kind of the Sheamus Daniel Bryan thing, or I think we talked about that a little bit, that I feared it might be that. I was really surprised to see Lashley win that match. I don't know. How did you feel watching it, Tom?
This made me really happy that I was spoiler free, because as this match was coming to an end, I'm like, okay, McIntyre's gonna get out of the hurt lock and he's gonna come back and he's gonna win, and then he doesn't, and I'm like, whoa! And I'm like, and I reflected back immediately on all of the things that we said here leading up to this show, thinking that it was such a slam dunk that McIntyre was going to win, but also saying we also believe that it would not be a bad idea to keep the belt on Lashley. So super thrilled that that's the case. This was good. So overarching with both nights, the energy, again, was a different energy from a WWE product than what we've gotten with the, I don't want to be incredibly hard, but the sterile Thunderdome. It adds to it, but it's now become, I think, a little bit sterile for me.
It was hard for me, to be honest, not to jump too far ahead, to go from the live crowds on Saturday and Sunday back to the Thunderdome. And I realized they had to, and that's what they got to do right now. And I know they're looking towards, it sounds like both them and AEW are hoping maybe July-ish to start being able to do some more touring again. But yeah, that jump to get back to the crowds, which was, like you said, a new energy, and then back to the Thunderdome was tough. And I'm sure it was tough on them too.
Yeah. So I felt like across the board, like you had talent who had an extra level of juice, to perform both nights. And that added to this as well when you pair that with the crowd. Really enjoyed the first match. For me, just to kind of quickly summarize night one in terms of the highlights, I'm not going to really get into the lowlights because there were some. The opener and Lashley retaining really was, a big takeaway for me. Cesaro and Rollins, freaking loved it. Probably my favorite match of the night, just because I have such a fondness for both of them. Probably not better than the main event, but I liked it. It was
right up there, I'd say. I'd agree with you.
Yeah. The main event, Bianca ascending to being the BEST and defeating Banks, and that was just a really great match. Well laid out, 2 pros. Gosh, Banks is so Belair, the ceiling is still way ahead of her, so that's super fun. And then, I think surprise of all surprises, Bad Bunny. I know we were super critical of it, and the promo on the Raw that led up to Mania, that kind of where this kind of materialized into a tag match, which we had recorded before we were able to see that. And a different time we might have, used that or had that to respond to here in our dialogue. That turned the corner for Bad Bunny with me. I'm still not super high on what they did, but everything that preceded that, it didn't make more sense, but I was a little bit more forgiving of all of the stuff that I thought was kind of lame when that promo happened, and then when the match played out. So I guess, I don't know, I thought I saw, and I don't remember where I saw it, probably somewhere online, that he had been training at the Performance Center for 3 months or so. So kudos to him for putting in the work, and kudos to all the other 3 guys that are the pros, the true pros, that this is their passion, their life, for giving him those opportunities to shine. And if I ever have to see that, Triple H handing off the briefcase with the microphone ad again, it'll be too soon.
Yeah, that was bad. Although I'm sure that was part of the deal. You come work WrestleMania, we'll plug your tour. quid pro quo, whatever you want to call it, which makes sense. I mean, that's business. You do deals. You scratch my back, I scratch yours. But no, to speak to that for a second, yeah, Bad Bunny put in the work and did a really nice job. One of the better celebrity matches, celebrities being involved in a match. I mean, you think back Pat McAfee, who's of course now the commentator on SmackDown and doing a good job there so far, a couple of nights in. He obviously was really good when he had his match with Cole, and then War Games, and then a few others. The guy from Arrow, Stephen Amell, did a nice job at SummerSlam a number of years back now. But I think he definitely was up there as far as actual performance in the ring. Lawrence Taylor, I can't. How can I forget that one back at WrestleMania 11? But Bad Bunny did great. I thought he really actually did really, really well. Like you said, the other three obviously helped lead him through. That's their job, though. That's what they're supposed to do. And they did a great job of it and made him look good and didn't make themselves look bad in the process, if that makes sense. Totally agree with you on Cesaro, Rollins. I hope that this continues, and it seems like it is for now. The build of Cesaro, because you and I have both been big Cesaro fans for a long time. One of my favorite memories, honestly, Tom, of you and I hanging out at a wrestling show was in Atlanta. Were you in Atlanta?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it must be Atlanta. We were at the Ring of Honor meet and greet thing they did, fan convention, for lack of a better word, and you getting your picture with Cesaro and Chris Hero, who we are both also big fans of, because they loved the T-shirt you were wearing. It was a band. I can't think of the band, obviously, but you probably remember who it was.
It wasn't a band. It was like a clothing line, and it was and I don't know where that picture is. If you happen to have it, if you find it somewhere digitally, I don't know who took that photo. It wasn't me, and it wasn't on a device that I owned at the time. So I think this was like 2013. 24, whenever it was. This was before like the big cell phone camera boom, right?
11, 12, 13, somewhere in there.
Yeah. So I don't know
where I moved out here.
Yeah, I don't know where that picture lives. Hopefully somewhere. Hopefully it's not been deleted. I don't have it. So yeah, I wish I had it.
I just they said, can we get our picture with you because you had this shirt on, and that was it was awesome. These are the kings of wrestling. I mean, come on.
It was more so Hero than Claudio at the time.
Yes,
but nonetheless, me and Chris Hero will forever have an unspoken kinship.
Yes,
that I know of that he doesn't.
Right, there you go. And coincidentally, just to totally plug another podcast here on our own feed, Ring of Honor has the ROH Strong podcast, which I don't listen to regularly. I've listened to some of them, usually if they've had somebody that interests me. And a couple of weeks back, Chris Hero was the guest, and they did about 2 hours.
It was great.
With Chris Hero. It was awesome.
Yeah.
Interesting to hear because you and I have been pining for him to show up in AEW or somewhere. So it was interesting to hear him talk about how, he just, for his own safety and safety of others, has not been working because of COVID, but that he knows the time will come later this year, hopefully, where he'll be back. And man, I can't wait. Get some Chris Hero somewhere. Get Chris Hero and Andrade somewhere. Let's do this. And have them work each other even. That'd be a fun match. I'd pay to see that. Anyways, that has nothing to do with WrestleMania Night 1. But our Chris Hero aside has now worked its way in. Yeah, main event. Let's talk about the main event. You already talked about it. So here's my thing. Sasha Banks is somebody who, for me, when she's on, she is on. She is one of the absolute best in the world. But I've seen her have some matches where she's not on. And for whatever reason, it just doesn't click that night. Bianca being so young and still pretty green, but really good at the same time. I was a little worried going into this main event. I thought that I really felt like it had two options. It was either going to be really great or it could be a real stinker if they both got a little too nervous, the moment got in front of it, something like that. all of those worries were totally unfounded. This was amazing. There's not a lot to compare it to. Easily the best women's main event of a WrestleMania in history. It was far better than the three-way match a couple of years ago at WrestleMania. Far better. And I loved the shot that you saw after the match. Well, I love the shot, let me say, before the match, where they were both holding back tears and both kind of looking at each other like, let's do this. And you could tell that wasn't Sasha Banks and Bianca Belair. That was the two women as real people, not as their characters, and realizing the moment that they were having. Only the second time that women have main evented, I guess, a night of WrestleMania. We've only had two-night WrestleManias. But it was a big moment. Both women of color. Obviously, that hadn't happened before either. Very, very cool moment. And then the spot after the match, or the moment after the match, where Bianca has the title in the ring and Sasha is just smiling ear to ear. And again, that wasn't Sasha Banks. That was Mercedes, whatever her name is. I can't think of her last name off the top of my head. But genuine moment. I felt great for both of those women. They absolutely stole the show. Awesome match. If you see one match from night one, if you don't watch the whole show, this would be the one I would tell you to watch. But I would also tell you, make sure you watch Cesaro as well, and Seth Rollins. So give yourself time for 2. And if you watch 3, I agree with you. Title match, Bad Bunny. Watch the show. Maybe skip the tag team turmoil. That wasn't great. I'm going to be honest. That wasn't great. But the main event, just great way to end the show. I also have to say, I don't think I want 2-night WrestleManias forever. But having 2 3 to 3.5 hour shows was certainly more digestible than sitting through an 8-hour show or a 7-hour show.
It's going to be really interesting a year from now when we reflect on what they do in Dallas.
Right.
Because they've already said it's one night, and you're right. I think we're conditioned as fans over the course of the last 18 months or so, 15 months, give or take, that 3.5 hour, 2.5 hour shows for major events is a really nice sweet spot. So
right. Even SummerSlam and Survivor Series and all those were 3 to 3.5 hours. They didn't go super duper long. I hope Vince doesn't fall back into his old habits. If there's one thing Vince is really good at, it's falling back into his old habits, though. So I'm a little concerned.
Question. So back in the day, my friends and I used to goof around and say, how much would you want to take a punch from Mike Tyson or a boxer? And we'd throw out like, oh, I'd take $1 million, not realizing that if Mike Tyson really hits you with a punch, you probably are dead. So I bring that out to ask you, Jim. I'm
curious where this is going.
Is there a price point for you? And if so, what is that number to take a lashing from Bianca Belair's hair?
No, there's not a price point for me for that. Holy smokes on the scar, or scar isn't the right word. The gash that Sasha, I almost said Mercedes, which is her real name. Why would I ever call her that?
You're buds. You hang out outside the ring.
Right. I've literally used that name one time here when I was just talking about her reaction, and now I'm going to call her it. Yeah, that gash on Sasha's ribcage. And the sound of it. I mean, that's not a leg slap either.
I think the sound is worse than I think what it looks like, but I have no idea, and I never want to find out.
I agree with you. I also this will probably be more than we thought we'd ever say about this, but I also don't know that there is a dollar amount I would take to have a person throw me off the top of a steel cage and land on my back in the middle of the ring. Look, you and I were both very critical of Braun and Shane's story, and I remain steadfast that it was just to use their word, a stupid story. And I am fine that Shane has not come, that it's over. But Shane McMahon is like 52 years old. He's in his early 50s, which he doesn't look it, but he's in his early 50s. The man has more money than you and I will ever see in our lifetime combined, unless we happen to win the lottery. He doesn't have to jump off the top of steel cages and do stuff like that, but for whatever reason, he really likes to. So kudos. It was a cool spot. Didn't make me like the match anymore. They kept it fairly short, which was good. I definitely didn't want that to become an epic match, but kudos to a guy who just really likes jumping off high stuff for whatever reason. Yeah.
And sadly, the featuring of Braun Strowman continues. I mean, I guess you have to.
At least he's not stupid.
They are paying him still, so I guess you have to use him. Also, so I wanted to make this comment earlier, but we weren't talking about Mania. But now that we're here, so the Tommaso Ciampa hair, thing has traded off. He is now shaving his head, and Braun is growing it back out. So there's some rules about who can have stubbly hair in WWE.
We can't have too many bald men, or we might think they're all Steve Austin.
Exactly.
There are actual, not probably with hair, but I know there have been times where they've changed people's names because, we can't have two, for some reason, Lance jumps to my mind. Like they changed, Lance Cade. That's what it was. They couldn't have Lance Cade. They made him Garrison Cade because Lance Storm was already on the main roster. So we can't have two guys named Lance.
We're going to get them confused.
Right. Like, oh, goodness. At one point, I thought that it was possible the Philadelphia Eagles were going to have 3 Jalens after last night, but they didn't end up getting Jalen Waddle. So, because they have Hurts and Rager. But anyways, could have called them the Philadelphia Jalens. Let's go to night 2, where there was not a rain delay. They were able to get the show off to a start right away as well. And night 2 results. Oh, yeah, we're going to have some stuff to talk about here, Tom. Randy Orton over The Fiend at WrestleMania. Randy Orton over The Fiend. The women's tag title match, Nia and Shayna retain over Natalya and Tamina. Kevin Owens over Sami Zayn with Logan Paul hanging out. Not even an enforcer, just kind of there. A U.S. title match, Sheamus over Riddle to win the title. Riddle and his birds of feet, or feet o' birds. I don't know. And Riddle now apparently in a new tag team on Raw. We'll talk about that maybe in a minute. The Intercontinental title Nigerian drum fight match. Apollo Crews wins the Intercontinental title from Big E with the help of Commander Aziz, formerly known as Babatunde and Dabakato. We just got to keep giving him goofy names. I don't know. Babatunde is actually his name, but anyways. The Raw Women's title match, Rhea Ripley wins the title over Asuka. And in the Universal title triple threat match, Roman Reigns pins both Daniel Bryan and Edge at the end of that match to retain and walk out still the Universal Champion. Tom, what were your thoughts on night 2?
Definitely this was the more star-studded night. And I don't know that we had that attitude before it happened. But retrospectively, watching it, looking at the results, it's like, wow, this was like, definitely if you were to angle night 1 versus night 2, like in terms of presentation, you had it here. I thought it was crazy to start with The Fiend versus Orton. And I loved all the gimmicks and the stuff and the big box and, non-disfigured Bray returning. I can do without it being under the red lights, but I understand why it happened. Thought it was nuts that Bliss transformed and had like the gushing goo. And that caused the Fiend to lose. And we've now clearly seen like they're like not together. And I know they're working through explaining that. And I think Lily is the new kind of, puppet for Alexa. And I want to say it was the Monday after Mania, but it might have been the next one. You had Bray Wyatt back in the Funhouse, but he seemed to kind of be like kind of an evangelistic kind of like character in a way. and not the traditional Bray Wyatt that we had seen. And he said there was going to be a whole new funhouse. So kind of like, just kind of like he was like kind of like a carnival barker in terms of, I felt, his presentation. So we'll see where that goes. Didn't hurt the Fiend to lose because, like we talked about, he can be kind of like that that gimmick that really doesn't need to have wins to stay fresh or deadly or current. But then you have Orton win to really have him do what he's doing now, which is RK Bro. Which, I mean, I don't know. If they're going to challenge AJ and Omos, then okay, that makes sense. But I don't know that that's the path. So we're talking WrestleMania, and then we're getting down the road too.
Yeah.
Loved Kevin Owens, loved Sami Zayn. Really thought it was the greatest hits of Kevin Steen and El Generico. In a way, they had a lot of flashbacks to their previous stuff.
I really wanted to see a brain buster though.
Yes,
the one thing I was missing.
Yeah. Not surprised that Sheamus defeated Riddle. Thought that would happen, even though I did not pick that. With the way it was building and the way they've done the U.S. title this year, it's just been really weird. When you least expect it is when it's going to change, and then you're like, okay, I guess that makes sense. Was quite surprised that Cruz did beat Big E. We've been talking a number of times, a number of weeks, that we see Big E being the world title challenger of either the Universal or the world title in Dallas next year. So to have him lose on the grandest stage of them all. Again, he didn't lose because of anything he did. He got attacked by the new Aziz, which again, I struggle because the fact that they think that we're not going to remember these guys from 3 months, 6 months ago, and like, oh, he looks familiar. Where do I remember him from? And like, again, I know we pay a little bit of extra attention to pro wrestling because we do a podcast and we're invested in a fantasy league. But we can't be the only ones. And if I had $1 for every time I said that here on the show, I'd have a lot of dollars, I think. And then the final two matches. Again, Rhea defeating Asuka makes perfect sense and good trade-off of passing the torch there with Rhea being champion. And then, of course, Charlotte returned on the Mania following the Raw following Mania, and she's back in the mix there. Although it seemed to start and stop, and there's a little bit of kind of like chicanery going on. She's clearly a heel, but it seems like Rhea is a heel too. So are we going to go for heel? I loved on NXT when you had Raquel come out, then Rhea come out, their embrace, and then Bianca come out. And again, like, it's the one time I think where you can really say our system is actually paying off. It's I think indicative of a gap, though. If you're doing so well with your female talent and you can put the spotlight there, but you can't do it with your men's talent, something in the system isn't working. And it's not the performance system; it's the way that people are being promoted, which is again why we still have Braun Strowman in the mix. I digress. We're not gonna spend a lot of time beating that horse today. And then the main event I thought was really great. Much like being surprised, but also appreciative that they kept the title on Lashley on night one, I have the same feeling about Roman Reigns on night two. And where does Edge go from here is a big question I have, and they haven't begun to start to give us that or unpack that. And tonight, we're recording before the SmackDown where it is the Universal title versus Daniel Bryan's SmackDown career, which is a big deal. And I know we'll see what happens. I think we both feel like we know what will happen. And maybe this is a spot where Edge returns or not. But in the media, in the non kind of presentation of WWE television, Daniel Bryan's been pretty adamant that he thought this might have been his last Mania. He wants to be, do more of the dad thing. He doesn't want to stop wrestling, but I don't know where he's at with his WWE contract. And he clearly could be a guy that goes and does a tour of New Japan or does, I can't see AEW being a destination because they're a weekly thing. I think Daniel Bryan wants a little bit more flexibility there. A lot is on the horizon for what might come.
Yeah, no, and
I hit a lot there, so I'm sorry. I talked a lot, and I would love to hear your thoughts and then responses as well.
Yeah, and so let me back up to the start of the show as well. And Randy and the Fiend, I've said numerous times here before, I'm a big fan of The Fiend, big fan of Alexa, and I like them as a pairing. I'm sad to see them go their separate ways. I feel like they could have done more together before they did this kind of split. And I think my other slight issue in it, and we'll just see how it plays out because they're still building this story. I know we saw Randy Orton versus Alexa, but I don't feel like we're going to see The Fiend versus Alexa. And so where does it go? Like, stories should build matches. And I don't see where that's likely in this case. And is it kind of is Alexa going to be, is Lily going to be Alexa's? I know there's the puppet or the stuffed little thing, the creepy little looking thing, but is Lily going to be the Fiend? Is Alexa to Lily going to be like Bray to the Fiend, if that makes sense? Kind of the split personality kind of thing. And Alexa certainly has had some of that already before Lily came into the picture, or was named. There was certainly that dual or multiple personalities almost, or characters within Alexa. So be interesting to see where that goes. Definitely didn't see it coming. So kudos to WWE for doing something we didn't expect. On that, again, we figured that was much like Drew and Bobby on night one. We thought that was a slam dunk. The Fiend was going to win that match, and they swerved us, as Vince Russo would say, and that might be okay. So then moving forward, not much to say about the women's tag match. Owens and Zayn, I thought that was a really fun match. I love that Logan Paul wasn't involved in the finish. They waited until after the match to have him shove Zayn and, kind of do that. And now he's apparently probably not going to appear on WWE for a while because he's getting ready to fight Floyd Mayweather in June. Good luck, my friend.
I was stunned when I saw that announcement. I'm like, this guy? Like, I know his brother's got a little bit of pub after the Askren fight, but I was like, oh, well, this is going to be a massacre.
Right. I will say, whatever they're charging for that show, I won't be paying it. So I don't have any interest in seeing Floyd Mayweather and Logan Paul. I didn't order the Jake Paul and Ben Askren fight either. But I'm really glad that he didn't have to get involved in the finish of that they just let those two have a match on Mania. I thought it was really good. Would I have loved him to have more time? Sure. Would I have loved to have been for bigger stakes? Sure. But I'll take what we can get sometimes too. The Nigerian drum fight was fine. It was, basically a no DQ match. I think it's interesting that they seem to have shifted. Aziz hit him with the Umaga Samoan spike is what it was, but now they're calling it the Nigerian nail. Okay, fine. And then hit a pretty bad looking choke slam, to be perfectly honest. I don't know if Big E didn't get up, for it right away, or they just had their timing off a little bit. It looked bad. So your dog wants to be a part of the podcast, it sounds like.
She decided to wake up and she has to use the bathroom. So.
Oh, okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
I can keep rambling if you need to run to the door too. So
nope, she's gonna wait. This is a song and dance we do every day.
Oh, okay.
And you're hearing the song in the background.
I'm hearing this. Okay. It seems like when Cruz had his promo, might have been 2 weeks ago on SmackDown. I didn't see SmackDown last week, so I could be mistaken, or I don't think I saw SmackDown last week. He fought Kevin Owens last week. Okay, yeah, I definitely didn't see last week then. I've read about it, but I didn't see it. He mentioned just the Nigerian nail. So I think they're better off for Aziz to just use that. It looked devastating. He did a lot of big motion with it and all of those kinds of things. So that looked really good. Don't do the choke slam. Just don't do it. Especially if the problem was on his end and not Big E's for that choke slam. I don't know enough to be able to tell you who screwed that up, but it looked really bad. The nail looks good. It looks devastating. Hit the nail. You got the big steel thing on your thumb or whatever that is. Do that.
Question for you, just real quick.
On the main roster, though.
Question for you here. So I don't know if you heard earlier in the year. And this is like around that time of Raw Underground coming to an end. There was conversation, or there was some rumor out there that Vince wanted Keith Lee, Omos, Babatunde and a couple other guys to like work on stuff at the performance center, right? So even though they were on TV, they were in varying capacities. Almost was a bodyguard or like a doorman. Dabba Kato was in Fight Club or a Raw Underground, and then Keith Lee was clearly a featured talent. If I would have told you, and you had that knowledge 3 months ago, that the last of that group, among other guys, but those are the three names that are coming to mind that you would see would be Keith Lee, how would you have believed that to be true?
I would have told you, Tom, that when you're working during the day, you should not be imbibing in beverages. That I'm not sure what's going on with Keith. He had an injury of some sort when he was supposed to be in that triple threat for the U.S. title. There's a lot of reports out there that he was supposed to win the U.S. title that night, but whatever injury, medical thing, COVID related, I don't know what it was. And we haven't seen him since. We haven't seen him. He has tweeted a couple times that he misses the fans too, and he'll be back soon and all of those kinds of things, but we haven't seen it. Other than seeing a picture that he got engaged, he and Mia Yim got engaged. So kudos and congrats to the happy couple. I hope he makes it back to TV before he gets married. Not knowing how quick I guess they want to get married, unless they get married, real soon. I hope he gets back to TV real soon, because you and I are both big Keith Lee fans. I hope whatever's going on is that he's getting well from whatever injury, medical, whatever it might be, that's keeping him off TV. And I also hope, this is going to sound bad, I hope there is something like that keeping him off TV, and it's not just that creative can't figure out a way to work Keith Lee into storylines, for goodness sakes.
And his social media has hinted at like there's more to the story, and someday he's going to be able to tell it. And like, it makes me like interested, but also really nervous.
I was a little concerned, to be perfectly honest, and we're going to talk about this in just a minute. This is the thing I forgot to put on the rundown. The releases that happened in the week after Mania, I was a little concerned we were going to see Keith Lee's name on there. Concerned for him, although I think Keith Lee would be awesome in a few other companies. Although from the financial standpoint, maybe not as good for him. I think they could figure out how to use him a lot better than WWE has on the main roster anyways. Free Keith Lee. That's all I'm saying. Free Keith Lee.
That's a new hashtag.
There you go. Rhea Ripley, I agree, Tom. I'd had a note down that I wanted to make sure I highlighted it, and I'm glad you did. That scene on NXT with Rhea and Bianca and Raquel was phenomenal. Very well done. Think about the title holders. Since NXT switched from Florida Championship Wrestling and then from the kind of game show-esque rookies with pros, stuff that they did for the first number of seasons, when it turned into an actual, what it is now, the developmental brand. Look at our champs on the men's side. Roman Reigns was, I don't know if he appeared on any of the super early NXT shows, but came up pretty quickly to the main roster. So I don't consider him really an NXT star in that way during that time. Bobby Lashley certainly did not go through NXT. U.S. title, Sheamus was in NXT, but that was
more so SCW. Yeah,
right. It came through developmental, but before it was NXT branded. Intercontinental, Apollo obviously had a run in NXT, although not one of their top guys. Had a nice run in NXT. Really one out of those four top men's titles. On your tag side, almost never appeared in NXT. AJ came straight in from New Japan. Dolph, and then Robert Roode obviously was NXT champ for a while. So one of your tag champs too. So not a huge, just when you look at the titles, not a huge lineage on the men's side from NXT that I would consider NXT stars. But every single one of your women's champs was an NXT star. Even the tag champs, only one of them. Well, was Nia an NXT?
Yes, yeah.
A little bit.
She had a pretty big feud with Bayley. I want to say when they did the UK takeover That was the women's match?
The women's match. That's right. She was there. So, yeah, all your women's champs came through NXT at some level. Yeah, figure it out with the guys. I don't know. And there's, I mean, obviously Drew's at the top of the card, and he had a good run in NXT, and you've got some others, but I don't know. I agree with you. It's kind of maddening when you look at the number of NXT stars, especially on the men's side, some on the women too, but especially on the men's side, that they bring up to the main, quote unquote, main roster and just don't have a clue what to do with. I don't know. It's on USA every Tuesday night, Vince. Tune in, maybe check it out, see what they're doing there. Main event. Yeah, I picked Roman to win, so obviously I was good with that. I kind of liked that he pinned them both. He'd made the comment that he was going to do that, but I think everybody just didn't pay attention to that comment in the promo because it's just him being, Roman, and he's so good he's going to beat them both and blah blah. And then he did it. Now, granted, the concertos and all of that, and it all played a role in how that happened, which is good. I read some people who are like, "Oh, you buried them because you pinned them both," and I'm like, "Did you all watch the match? Like, there was a reason that happened, and it wasn't just because Roman destroyed everybody. If they would have done that, where just Roman overcame both of these guys, destroyed them both, and then pinned them both, like, okay, yeah, that would have sucked. That isn't what happened. So it helps the heel character because now he's saying things like that's how it happened, but we all know that's not quite what happened, which is what makes him a good heel. Like, I loved it. And I love the follow-up. I am a bigger Roman Reigns fan right now than I have ever been in my wrestling fandom. I just think he is clicking on all cylinders. I think he's really good in the ring. He's always been pretty good in the ring. He really has been. As much as he got booed because he was getting shoved down our throats, now he's getting shoved down our throats, and it works because he's a heel. Why Vince couldn't figure that out for 8 years, I don't know, however many years.
He seems to actually have like a humanized character, because not all humans are good people, and not all humans are like without an ego, right? So like I feel like he's like he's not relatable to me, but like I understand like what he's giving us. Like he actually feels like those are actual emotions. I don't know that I ever before felt that Roman Reigns could connect on an emotional level, and that's the purpose of being a professional wrestler. If you don't have that emotional connection, who's going to care about you?
Yeah, no, 100% agree. Yeah, he's just clicking. I mean, the guy is just clicking. And as I said, I think on our previous show, I think when somebody beats Roman Reigns for that title, you could have a made man, whoever that is. And Daniel Bryan and Edge didn't need that. They're already made men. They're fine. That loss didn't hurt Daniel Bryan or Edge in the least. And if it hurt him in anybody's eyes, are you paying attention? Like, it didn't hurt him. Come on. And so that's why that's why I picked Roman and why I wanted Roman to win, because I just don't think either one of them need that. Daniel Bryan doesn't need to beat Roman Reigns tonight on SmackDown. I'm still on the Big E bandwagon. I still think that is the person who should beat him at some point. I think you need to build Big E. Obviously, you're going to probably have a return with Apollo Crews and work through that story. But I'm fine if the reason that Apollo won the title is so they can still wrap that story up here in the next month or so, and then let Apollo be the Intercontinental guy and go off and then start Big E's ascent towards the top of the card. If that was the reason to make that title switch, as much as I would have loved Big E to have that moment, I would have been more, I don't want to say more okay, because it wasn't that I wasn't okay with how it happened, but I would have understood if Big E won at Mania, but then on SmackDown the next week, Apollo won the title, so that they could start that ascent. Much like, and I guess I briefly said something about it during NXT, but then didn't go into it. Santos wins the ladder match, and then on Tuesday night loses the Cruiserweight title to Kushida. Not 100% sure where that's going yet. Thought maybe it was going to be again so they can move Santos up, but right now he's still kind of in that Cruiserweight mix. We'll see, though. Again, they may just be wrapping that up. Your dog is very angry. Is convinced you are not paying attention. What's your dog's name, Tom?
Allie.
So Jim, Tom, and Allie here on 3 Spot Monkeys live this morning. Oh, that's awesome. Love it. But love the main event. So I thought night one was better than night two, honestly, from a enjoyment standpoint. There was nothing wrong with night two. I thought WrestleMania delivered. Did it beat NXT? No, but it couldn't. I don't think it had any chance.
I feel like overall in ring, night two was more balanced.
Okay.
But I thought the better matches, like singularly, happened on night one.
That's a good. Yeah, that's fair. The women's tag I didn't think was great on night two too. That tag division is, I don't know. They got to figure something out there.
Vince doesn't care about tag teams. He never has, and until and that may never happen. Like if you're looking for tag team wrestling, you're not looking to WWE. It's almost a wonder why they even still have tag titles and why they have 2 sets of tag titles. I'm sorry, 3 sets because they have women's.
Right. No, very true. I think the tag champs absolutely should be similar to the women's tag champs. One set where they can go to any brand kind of thing. That would make total sense. Because honestly, just sitting here when I was trying to think of the champions, I forget that the Dirty Dogs are even the SmackDown tag champs until they show up on SmackDown.
They do too. They show up on Fridays. Oh yeah, we do have these.
Yeah, we're the champs. Woohoo! One more thing before we hop over to AEW, and we're going double Broadway, it feels like here right now. I wanted to get the full list up. WWE released 10, I think it is, people in the week after WrestleMania.
April 15th, I believe, was the exact day.
Yes.
And it was a year to the day where they did the massive layoffs during the pandemic.
Right.
Like maybe like the heat spot or the hot spot of like our world, like, being turned on its head.
And so those 10, just to run them down: Samoa Joe, the Iconics, Peyton Royce and Billy Kay. I got something to say about that, you better believe. Mickie James, who apparently then got her stuff sent to her in a trash bag. Classy. Chelsea Green, a little bit surprising there. Tucker from Heavy Machinery. Kalisto, Bo Dallas, and Wesley Blake. I don't think... Oh, and Mojo Rawley as well got added to that in the day or so after. Most of those don't totally shock me. Bo Dallas, I've read a couple of times, he's got a farm. He and Liv Morgan are together, and they've got a farm, and kind of has been getting ready for life after wrestling. So didn't surprise me really with Bo. Kalisto is what Kalisto is. He's fine. He's good. I think he'll find a spot to make some money. Samoa Joe, I can only assume he wants to wrestle, and they weren't going to want to put him back into the ring, and the wrestler contract probably paid him a lot more than an announcer contract would. It's kind of my assumption in the Samoa Joe thing. If Joe wants to work, there's a lot of places that'll bring Joe in, and Joe will. I'm kind of looking forward to a Samoa Joe run outside of WWE and seeing him get to do what he wants to do and what he does best. When he wants to hang it up, I think he definitely has a future as a commentator if he'd like it. I think he did a great job on Raw. But yeah, give me Joe back in the ring. That's fine with me. If as long as he's healthy and he's able to do that. Yeah, I'm all for Joe. And
just for context, and I know the Iconics, I think, are going to be the big topic. I just wanted to quickly, because I didn't have a frame of reference. According to CageMatch.net, Samoa Joe was last in the ring on February 10th, 2020. So he's approaching 15 months of inactivity. Again, I know that injury played a role in that, and I know, unfortunately, or fortunately, because he needed to still be focused or featured, and I think being an announcer on Raw was a good use of him as he recovered. He's got to be ready to come back. But why there wasn't value seen in him really blows me away as an in-ring performer. I believe very strongly this is Vince. I don't know if I'm mixing my messages, and I know we're we're already deep in this conversation, and I don't mean to take us one kind of page deeper, one chapter further. Have you had a chance at all to see any of the biographies that A&E has produced?
No, they're both recorded, but I haven't seen them.
Well,
so,
I've only seen the Stone Cold one. Roddy's on the DVR. It might be on in the background today while I work later on. Vince didn't see anything in Steve Austin. After the Ringmaster gimmick was a dud. I wonder how many talents have had that situation in this modern era where Vince just can't see beyond what he sees, even though there's a deeper level of talent there. And I wonder if Samoa Joe is caught in this space. And you're right. He's going to, wherever he lands, golly, and I don't 90 days from April, so middle of July. He was teased on the July Impact pay-per-view trailer, as was Chelsea Green for that matter. But we'll see. Yeah.
As was Okada and Naito.
Yeah, right. You and I are both big Joe fans, and we clearly go back, to our Ring of Honor roots, and being strongly and emotionally invested in that promotion and how he ascended to, his first level of stardom, even though people might view him as a TNA talent first, he's always a Ring of Honor guy first.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, where Joe lands, I can't wait for July to see where he shows up and what he does. And I think, July, August usually is a G1. I'm just saying, if, it seems like some travel between Japan and the US is a little more doable now. We have some people who are moving back and forth a little more freely. Obviously, it takes a little bit. There might be quarantine rules and all of those kinds of things. But yeah, just saying. Samoa Joe and the G1 would be, whoo. And New Japan Pro Wrestling would get my 10 yen a month or whatever again for New Japan World for that for sure. So I don't know, be interesting. Yeah, the Iconics. Vince doesn't hear about tag teams. The one women's tag team that he ever had that actually looked and acted like a tag team, maybe not the one, but one of the few, frankly, that hasn't been just two single stars thrown together. And then he splits them. Okay, so you're going to do something with them. No, you split them for no reason. You didn't ever do anything with any of them. Billie Kay was actually starting to get over with this whole clingy, want to be your friend, need to find a friend, seemed like maybe she and Carmella were going to do something. Well, sorry, Carmella, guess you're not doing that anymore. Talk about another person who Vince just seems to have forgotten he brought up and changed her character, and she had gotten really good in the ring, so now we don't use her. And Peyton Royce, it's become a running joke here on Two Spot Monkeys, but they had her beat Bayley at the Survivor Series. I've said it a million different times that they botched the follow-up. I don't even know if botched is the right word. They just didn't do anything. It doesn't even like they did it poorly. They just didn't do anything. She cut a pretty good promo on Raw Talk a couple of months back. She had one match on Raw. I don't feel like they've ever given those two a real chance after they split them, after they took the titles off them, really. I think they both have a future. Are they Rhea Ripley, Asuka level in the ring? Probably not. Maybe they'll get there, but probably not. Character-wise, though, I think they're both gold. I think there's a space for them. Like I said, best women wrestlers in the world? No. Okay. Not everybody's gonna be, but it doesn't mean there isn't a spot for them somewhere in the wrestling world. I think both of these women will land on their feet. I think Chelsea Green will land on her feet.
And with Chelsea Green, I think it's just the unfortunate circumstance of too many injuries.
Yeah.
She just
bad timing.
Yeah.
And her I don't think they're married. I think boyfriend. But they've been together a few years. Seems to have a good spot in Impact now. So Chelsea certainly has a history in Impact as well. So I wouldn't be shocked to see her at all come July in Impact. But maybe the Iconics show up there. I think it'll be interesting to see, do the Iconics try to go somewhere together as a tag team? There really isn't a women's tag team division in any of the main companies outside of WWE. But do they have to be a tag team? Could they maybe add a member and become a unit similar, although very different in character, but, like the Allure or, the Beautiful People back in the days, and I don't want those characters per se, but could they add an Iconic basically? And they won't be able to call themselves that. But those two disappointed me because I just don't think they ever got behind those two in the way that I think they could have and could have had some good stuff with. So, you know what? I'm a Peyton Royce fan, more Peyton than Billy, but I like Billy as well. I'm interested to see what those ladies do because I do think they're probably the ones with the most untapped potential that got released on the 15th. So we'll see what happens. Those disappointed me.
Yeah, and to be honest, I'll be surprised. I am surprised there weren't more people let go. It's never enjoyable to watch people lose their jobs at all. It's kind of become a running kind of tradition that sometime after Mania, people do get released and they turn over the roster to an extent. But just like we were saying, there wasn't that influx of talent into Raw or SmackDown. SmackDown appears that Aleister Black's going to be coming back with kind of a resorted character. Charlotte returned on the Raw. We had the Viking Raiders return, but in terms of that traditional like big news Monday after Mania or even SmackDown after Mania, that didn't materialize this year.
Yeah, I agree. It's just nothing really. Charlotte, the Viking Raiders. Disappointing on that. And I don't know. We'll see where these releases land now, I guess. Tucker for AEW champ. I don't know. I'm kidding.
Don't be a sucker for Tucker.
Right. Yeah. Tucker. Again, he kind of tweeted similar to like Keith Lee that someday there would be more to his story or something like that too. So, another guy, they split up that tag team and did absolutely nothing with Tucker afterwards. So did they even give him a shot? You decided to split the tag team. I think at that point his fate was sealed.
I think they missed the chance. He could have been the long lost son of the Godwins, but
there you go. He does have the look. Last thing before we wrap this double Broadway up here is AEW. They've had a pretty good build here. Blood and Guts coming up next week. Or 2 weeks ago, they said a one-match event, which made it seem like it was going to be just Blood and Guts. I don't know if the match was going to go 2 hours or if they were going to do some promo stuff before and then, hour and a half Blood and Guts match. But now they've added 4 other matches to that show, which I feel like is a little too much, to be perfectly honest, because AEW doesn't usually have a lot of short matches. So I don't know. And now that I think I don't have those 4 matches in front of me, but Britt Baker is going to be in action. So, okay, she probably, gets a 3 or 4 minute squash over somebody.
Cody and QT, which I think probably turns into a continuation of their angle. Yeah, I see them, which surprisingly, I'm kind of interested in that feud, and I'd have been hard. Okay, I'd have been hard pressed to have you tell me that would have been the case 3 months ago. My thinking would be is they want to hold that off or whatever that materializes into Double or Nothing. But if they give us a match next week, so be it.
Yeah. No, I think that is definitely a continuation. Yeah, kudos to them for making me give a rip about QT Marshall, which I didn't think I could. And immediately giving, you kind of brought in 3 guys who, they'd been on Dark, but this is the first time you're kind of giving them a feature. Well, Agogo hadn't even been on Dark. But you're giving those 3 guys, Camarado, Agogo, and Solo. They all have O's at the end of that.
That was funny.
There's something to that? I don't know. All of a sudden, I didn't think about that until as I was saying those names. you're giving them a purpose right away. So kudos to that, because I think sometimes, all wrestling companies, that you bring a new guy in and you just don't have a whole lot of purpose for them. And you gave all three of these guys purpose right away with QT. And yeah, have made me actually care, which kudos. That's the job, right? That's what they're supposed to do. So good job on that for them. I think that'll be fun to watch. I thought it was interesting when QT introduced the three of them like the next week after the angle, and said that Aaron Solo is not just somebody's boyfriend. That was a nice little inside. If you happen to know Aaron Solo's previous life, he and Bailey were together for a long time. That's not a secret, but some people probably watching AEW have no idea of that. And it was a nice little inside comment that those of us who know, but it wasn't so much that those who don't know are going to get hung up on it and be like, what's that? And lose everything else he said.
The Google searches for Aaron Solo's girlfriend skyrocketed.
Yes, probably. And everybody went, "Oh, he was with Bailey."
The other two matches, I was scrolling and looking for them quickly just to have them be kind of on our radar before we really talk about the main reason. Omega and Nakazawa versus Mox and Kingston, which developed based on the angle this past Wednesday, and then a 4-way tag which has SCU, Jurassic Express, the Varsity Blondes, and the Acclaimed, which on paper looks really sexy. So those are just like, I'm huge on Jurassic Express. The money is SCU versus the Young Bucks at some point, because there's the overarching kind of angle that when the next time SCU loses, they're done as a team.
Right.
So that there's always that on the line when they fight. The Acclaimed, specifically Max Caster, nothing against Anthony Bowens. Gosh, those guys are future stars. And then the Varsity Blondes, again, Pillman and Garrison, two young guys with super high ceiling. But yeah, Blood and Guts is where it's at. The Pinnacle or the Pineapple, depending on your preference, versus the Inner Circle. And boy, Jim, going back to when the Pinnacle debuted and the Attack and the builds, and Jericho's promos have been pretty hot for this. There's also been a couple of lukewarm spots, I think you could say.
That's Jericho, though, for me.
At this point, yeah.
At this point in his career.
Yeah. So I don't know, like, not only just the excitement for the fact that we're getting this gimmick, a little bit later, than we had hoped for, and can you remind me, it was the Inner Circle on the heel side before, and was it like the Moxley troupe on the other side?
It was Cody and Dustin. Mox might have been a part of it, now that you say that. And I can't remember who the other two were off the top of my head.
Probably the Bucks.
The Bucks.
Probably the Bucks. So anyway, like, this is going to be nuts, and what a great spot for, again, I think we're both huge Sammy Guevara fans. I know you love MJF. I've turned the corner on him. He grows, week by week, day by day for me. Jericho's out there. Sean Spears deserves a chance to, again, I thought his AEW career was in the tank. They brought him back to life. Proud and Powerful and the FTR guys. I mean, holy smokes. And then you've got Wardlow and Hager. This is going to be nuts. I can't wait.
And I apologize. I just pulled it up because as I was saying those names, they didn't quite feel right. Cody, I was right on, and the Bucks. But it was Adam Page and Kenny Omega were the other two.
Okay.
So it was Cody, the Bucks, Page, and Omega against the Inner Circle was the original one. Of course, that got postponed after with COVID and all of those sorts of things going on.
Yeah, it was like, 3 weeks away from happening, perhaps.
If that, yeah, it was coming up. And that was at the point, too, where they were saying, no more than 10 people in any given area. And so having a 10-person match, probably not an awesome idea in that moment. It was very early in the pandemic. We were learning a lot. I'm looking forward to this match next week. Definitely am looking forward to this match. I feel like maybe it's a little early for this match. Like, this feud has just really gotten going in the last, month and a half, I think. And I think there's a lot of legs to it. And I don't think this ends the feud by any means, which is a little bit strange to me because Blood and Guts feels like it ought to end the feud, right? And it certainly shouldn't. Like this thing has legs for some time with the 10 guys involved. Do we see a turn? I think that's possible. I think that's very possible. I know our friend Annette made that comment on the board that we're a part of, and I think she could certainly be onto something there. I don't know. I think that's part of what's interesting, I guess, to me about this. Part of me feels like it's too early, but yet that makes me want to see it even more to see, okay, what do they do? Because I don't feel like you can just have a definitive answer like, yep, boom, this happened and we're done. And now the Pinnacle and Inner Circle go on their separate ways. I don't think that's a good idea yet. At some point, that will need to happen. But man, you got a whole lot of matches you can have and a whole lot of, get some titles involved and things like that. I mean, this doesn't need titles, but yet that'd add even more stakes to their feud. If you've got tag teams feuding over the Revival and Proud and Powerful or whatever they're called, which they almost never use that name. But Santana and Ortiz versus the Revival for the tag belts or something down the road. I just, I don't know. And it's pretty clear that Tony Khan likes factions. I think we have definitely discerned that he has drunk from the New Japan and Gabe Sapolsky Kool-Aid of put everybody into a faction at some point. And that's okay because I like factions too. So as long as they have a purpose and they have, they're not just for a joke. I don't love joke factions, but I don't really see any of those. I thought the factory could be that. I was a little worried when they put the factory together that, it was they were just going to get beat and be looking at the lights all the time. So far, that has not been the case with the factory. So I'm glad that I was wrong on that so far. I'm looking forward to Blood and Guts. AEW has been pretty consistently good to great the last month or so, I would say at least. I have not seen this week's episode other than the very first match, which I enjoyed. Brian Cage getting a big win. Hey, like that. But they've been clicking. There hasn't been a whole lot they've done where I've been like, I don't necessarily. 2 weeks ago, they did the whole Moxley and Kingston, ram the truck into the trailer of the Elite. I mean, I guess we've seen that a million times before in wrestling. It's always goofy to me because, of course, they're never in there because you would have killed them if they were in there. So, it's a little bit like, okay, there's that angle again.
I think the big thing for me over the last couple of weeks is like the Young Bucks seemingly full heel turn. Like I didn't see that coming at all in the way that this was.
I mean, it had been 3 weeks since they turned last, so it was time again.
I mean, I saw them like being racked emotionally with this whole Kenny Omega, Don Callis thing. I didn't see it. I mean, it makes sense, and maybe it's a ruse. Maybe they're just, riding it out. Well, right. You would hope that it's not. I don't know. Like, I just think that's interesting because the one thing, the one critique I've always had with AEW is, to an extent, the way they move talent, into that heel and space. I said heel and face space. That's what I meant to say. Kind of a little too quick for my taste. And I think this might have been the vibe I left that with. I know the story isn't over yet. But yeah, that's, the Elite returning and being this 5-man group certainly is stacked. And if it's legitimate and it stays the course for however long it needs to, as Kenny continues to collect belts, that's okay.
No, absolutely. And I half joke, but half serious. Yeah, the Bucks, they're kind of like Big Show on those flip-flops at this point. So leave them on one side for a little bit, Tony. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I think it'll be fun next week. Ideally we tend to record on Fridays, so Friday morning. So if we do, hopefully we will both been able to see the show by then and be able to have some thoughts on Blood and Guts as well. And let's see, will we? No, it won't be next week yet. It'll be the week after, I believe, that we'll have a head-to-head for WrestleMania Backlash. So next week we can catch up on AEW, obviously with whatever happens. Maybe some Ring of Honor talk and some other things. Anything else, Tom, that you want to say before we sign off here for our double Broadway?
Yeah, no, this is good catch up, good conversation. Thanks for listening. Stuck with us for 2 hours, and we look forward to getting back to a more regular, ideally weekly content output for everyone and ourselves, because we enjoy this too.
Absolutely. Well, everybody stay safe, and we will talk to you all again next week. Have a great week, and thanks for joining us here on Two Spot Monkeys Live.